everybody. My name is Will Robbins, and I'm the president of Victoria University and the University of Toronto. Welcome you to this first of the roundtable sessions where we'll continue the discussion of plurilingualism, and we'll have discussion afterwards on what is at the table as well, so we can bring together contributions of all of the speakers on the topic. The first speaker is Ambrogio Camozzi Pistoja. In introducing him, I feel I should have come with insults because he's working on insults. Working on a literary criminal history of insults. Ambrogio, I didn't have time to think of good insults to introduce you. And the fact that you're an assistant professor at Harvard doesn't sound like quite an insult. After being at Pembroke in Cambridge, Ambrogio is going to speak to us today about plurilingualism in the convivio. So, Ambrogio.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's an honor and privilege. I'm so excited to be able to participate in this conversation. I feel like I'm stealing time to the time that we could spend discussing Emanuele's incredible paper, but in a way, a very fascinating paper, but in a way I think that I'm going to say things and I'm going to address issues that are ended up being very connected, closely connected to what Emanuele said. Talking about the convivio and the banquet at this time of the day is a bit dangerous. I hope you all have the snack. Yes, feel free to do it as I'm speaking. So yes, I'm going to discuss some things related to what Emanuele said. He talked mainly about the commedia, whereas I will look just at the convivio. And just as he said, this is a work in progress. I have to narrow it down to some ideas, and the evidence I will bring is inevitably very limited. If you want to test some of these ideas, asking to see more evidence, I'll try to provide it during the Q&A. I would like to start from finding the pointer. Right. I would like to start from here, at the beginning of the convivio, one of the first passages of the convivio. Hai piaciuto fosse al dispensatore dell'universo che la cagione della mia scusa mai non fosse stata che né altri contra me avrei fallato né io sofferto. Avrei appena ingiustamente pena di codicilio e di povertà. The convivio is Dante's first response to his fall, to his loss of status, to his painful loss of status. Here is that vulnerability that Emanuele already was pointing out for the commedia. It's already there in the convivio at the very beginning of it. And Dante's first response to his exile is a grand response. It's a splendid response. This is a text that defines easy explanation. It is a prosimetrum, an interlocking of poems and prose, and a self-commentary or auto-exegesis, a genre pioneered by Dante only a few years earlier with his Vita Nova. What makes this text enigmatic is first and foremost its unfinishedness. Of the planned 14 commentaries, only the first 3 were written, leaving the work in a state of unstable incompleteness. Now, Emanuele was mentioning quantum physics and quantum indeterminacy, and perhaps you're all thinking now of Gödel's incompleteness theorems. Why? Why is this text unfinished? What is the status of the convivio within Dante's intellectual, poetic career? What is its relationship to the Vita Nuova and the Commedia and the other works? Is it a polynodic relationship? Is it a linear, circular, figural? The first book, and especially the first chapter of the first book, functions as an accessus to the text. And this is something that you all know having read the Convivio. We are given the title, the titulus, Convivio. We are given the divisio, texts, into 14 books. The qualitas, we we are told that it's going to be a mixture of canzoni and explanatory proses. We're also told about the actor, the Florentine exile. And also, we're also told about his previous works and his planned works, his symbol of a vernacular language. Now, these accessus, the vital information that it contains, that can help us to define this text, this whole accessus takes form and life around a metaphor, the metaphor of the banquet of the bread of angels. It is a very elaborate metaphor. This is just a section of it from the first chapter. O beati quelli occhi che seggiano quella mensa dove l'opale degli angeli si maluca e miseri quelli che con le pecore hanno comune cibo. This opening metaphor makes us immediately aware of another defining feature of this convivium, apart from its unfinishedness. It's polysemy. I say polysemic, and I mean two things, aptly so. First, that words are constructed and ordered to bear multiple meanings at the same time. And second, that the poet has wired these multiple meanings throughout the text, forging separate but often synchronized discourses. The pairing of the two terms beati and mensa connect the banquet imagery to the beati qui a cena nuptiarum anni vocati sum. The oves, the pecore, there are few reminders of the pauci sunt qui invenit ea. Those, and again, the ovum, the oves appear in Matthew 7, 15, 16. The sheep that are left away, the pecore that are distant from the eye mensa, recall the lost oves of Israel in Matthew 10, 6. Oves that San Bonaventure comments as simplices et humiles, those that the bonus pastor a reficendum vocat. But then the great image of the banquet of knowledge, connecting the symposium of Plato, so these non-Christian traditions. The banquet of knowledge in Cicero, in the Oratore, that stands as a metaphor of the art of memory. Or in Geoffrey of Insoff, in the Poetria Nova, where the banquet is rhetoric itself. And these are two case studies examined by Leonora Buoncore. But we also have the Lanzatura of the presomatic tradition of satire. And the poet is there, ai piedi di coloro che seggiano ricordo di quello che da loro cade. The poet, we find him unsurprisingly casting himself as a collector of breadcrumbs. He is a compiler, someone who pieces things back together. His world has crumbled, and he is piecing things back together. And yet, this new home, that is the convivio, looks nothing like anything seen before. In the convivio we find scraps of knowledge from fields as diverse as cosmology and literary criticism, liturgy and natural philosophy, satire and optics, political theory and metaphysics, ethics and literature of exile, and so forth. All these are fused together throughout the four surviving books. And these discourses, often they are contained within a digression. Other times they span chapters, paragraphs, entire books. The text has been carefully engineered to become accessible from a number of perspectives. There are multiple points of access into the convivio. It can be read as a treatise, it can be read as a treatise on moral philosophy, a treatise on the philosophy of language, a treatise on cosmology, on rhetoric, etc. As an anti-Eurocratic pamphlet, the fourth book, where the church is not mentioned, and yet it's described, the conditions are described for man to become fully noble. No role to the church is allowed there. I mean, this text is so diverse. We also find elements of a universal chronicle on on the origins of the Roman Empire, a contribution to the usus pauper controversy in the Quaestio de Nobilitate on the status of riches, of worldly goods. Now, these multiple readings of this text are possible because of a highly sophisticated plurilingualism. And here again I'm connecting to what Emanuele was saying. By plurilingualism I mean the coexistence, the living together in the pages of this convivio of multiple languages, technical languages, idioms, and multiple discourses. And this plurilingualism, as it has been already noted, is a symptom of this text encyclopedic vocation. These two features have just been discussed by Emanuele in relation to the comment. The encyclopedic nature, he talked about the Summa, and he talked about the plurilingualism. Dante is still playing with these powerful notions, or already playing with these very powerful notions in his convivio. Now, so far so good. We all sort of agree with this reading of the convivio. I hope, I suppose, the fact that we can find so many different registers. But we have a non-minor issue here. What is particularly striking is not simply how diverse the scribes or the crowns are, but the fact that many come from traditions in potential or open conflict. Radical Franciscan views on poverty are presented next to the more moderate positions of Aquinas. There is a fairly constant recourse to perspectives that are ideologically in tension. We can start with thinking of the great tension that separates and yet unites the first two books to the third, something that has been studied by Maria Corti and John Scott and others. Too. Or the presence, for instance, of dissonant linguistic theories, especially with regard to the superiority of Latin over vernacular, which is something that Emanuele hasn't discussed in his paper in relation to the convivio, but we see it re-emerging in the Vulgareloquentia and the Commedia. Now, precisely about the existence of these conflictual linguistic theories, Francesca may describe the convivio overall linguistic theory in terms of androgyny and cross-gendering. Dronka and Paola Nasti have shown us how notions, Aristotelian notions of what philosophy is, coexist with the Boethian, with the Solomonic tradition. Baranski has studied in the banquet the mescolanza di generi letterari, the meddling of canonical genres. Lawrence Hooper referred to this text emphasizing the quasi-commento. When Dante describes it, Dante adds that adverb, quasi, not exactly a commentary. Mutatis mutandis, I feel that a similar verbal use might be seen at the end of the Monarchia in that coda modo that seems to reopen the rigid bipartite structure presented until the point to a new life. That quasi-commento is perhaps a symptom of Dante's antipathy for binary solutions, for black and white. The most puzzling, spectacular, or at least the most famous point of syncretism that we find in the Convivio concerns the object of knowledge. Here we have two divergent systems, two contradictory positions in a way. I'm using contradictory not exactly in a technical sense, but anyway, it's to try to explain what's happening. On the one hand, the Convivio appears to set strict boundaries on what a human being naturally desires to know. And Dante writes, inasmuch as it is not possible for our nature, I'm terribly sorry, there is a, I missed the slide. Yes. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll read it. It's from Convivio Book 3. Inasmuch as it is not possible for our nature to know what God and certain other things are, we do not by nature desire to know this. This is what Dante writes in Convivio 3:15-10. Our happiness in this life would therefore depend on our ability to accept such natural boundaries and be content with the silence that we can possess in the here and now. Yet, earlier, in Book 2, Dante, his Convivio, took steps in an opposite direction. Chapter 4, Dante writes: pure risplende nel nostro intelletto alcuno lume della vivacissima loro essenza, in quanto vedemo le sopradette ragioni e molte altre, sì come afferma chi ha gli occhi chiusi l'aere essere luminoso. Dante argues that already in this life, while our soul is bound and imprisoned by the organs of our body, we can perceive in our intellect some light of the essence of God and the angelic intelligence, just as one who has his eyes closed affirms that the air is bright by means of a little splendor. From Book 2 to Book 3, Dante seems to have changed his mind. Paolo Falzone describes this incoherence with the words una certa incongruenza logica. It is a fact that the more closely, punctually, I don't know if it's the right adverb, we read this fascinating text, the more contradictions, paradoxical truths, systems of thought we find. What, in the words of Mario Matti, is the contraddittorietà anche ideologica dell'opera. Another set of contradictions emerges when we look at the readership of the Convivio, and more precisely at its epistemological models. Who are the readers of this text? Who is Dante's intended audience? Who is the ideal reader, i.e. the type of reader described by the text itself? And who the real historical reader, the people who Dante wanted this text to be read by? Ma che domande? Everyone. Is there an author who does not want to be read by everyone, if he or she could, to have as many readers as possible? Well, this is what the beginning of the Convivio would seem to suggest. Tutti gli uomini, naturalmente, desiderano di sapere. All men desire naturally to know. I highlighted other sections because I'm trying to condense things here. Please note the Aristotelian language, technical language of these exordium. These are typical features of, as you all know, of analytical language or philosophical language and traits of universal disputations. Well, everyone, however, is not the answer in this case, in Dante's case, and this leads to all sorts of problems. E però adesso non si assetti alcuno male dei suoi organi disposti, però che né denti né lingua ha né palato, né alcuno assettatore dei vizi, perché lo stomaco suo è pieno d'umori velenosi contrari, sì che mai vivanda non terrete. To the question who should read the Convivio, Dante responds, not everyone. In fact, he exhorts certain people to not read his text, to not eat the food he prepared in his Convivio. And these kind of contradictions are looked at also by Simonelli. Simonelli has wrote an essay in the 1980s, and she essentially is saying, Dante is writing something for those who are hungry and they are not, they don't have knowledge. He's also writing something for those who, I should read it, sorry. A prima vista sembra addirittura più semplice definire i gruppi di persone a cui Dante non vuole indirizzare la sua opera. Innanzitutto i menomati del corpo. People who have these bodily defects cannot read the text and so they're not allowed to read it. They're not invited to read it. And this is, okay, accepted. Cioè, che non hanno le possibilità fisiche di capire. Poi he says, i cattivi e i viziosi, il cui stomaco è pieno di cuori contrari. And then he says, it sounds like the public that Dante is speaking to is that group of people who are healthy in their body and in their minds. But people who are healthy in their bodies and their mind, they do not need the Convivio according to that. There are some interesting issues here. This is one of the symptoms of the coming together of different epistemological models. What a fascinating conundrum, another paradox. On the one hand, the convivio espouses Aristotelian ideas of knowledge and virtue. The full knowledge it disseminates serves as nourishment for those hungry readers on the path to a noble life. The purpose of the text, from this perspective, is to popularize philosophy so as to lead to human betterment. And this has been studied egregiously by many, including Sonia Gentili, in her L'uomo aristotelico all'origine della letteratura italiana. But on the other hand, as we've just seen, Dante writes that not all the hungry are allowed to join the feast. He explains that those who are full of
And of course, this is often read as the very embodiment of caritas, of giving more than is due in a gratuitous way, absolutely. But I also think linguistically it's wonderful to think of it almost as a spilling over. And this might be her joy, this might be her affect, this might be her erotic kind of, dimension. And yet what we also see here is that it's caro, it's gradito, it's desired, it brings pleasure. And if you start to analyse the language, this isn't the only example, that word corollario, as we know, it's a technical scholastic word. It comes from the Greek via the Latin into Matilda's vernacular enunciation, and it's not the only one that's costruito. There's lots of examples of words she uses in a very interesting way that are fused with this lyric, because Elena and others have noticed that corollario is also related to the garland of flowers, so you get both together in that one word. And the last point I wanted to make on this quotation is that really wonderful phrase, the idea of oltre promessione te così spazia, that verb spaziarsi, because this isn't the only time that it comes in the commedia. It's usually referred to the idea of when desire is so full that it's not that it's stilled, but it does reach a kind of perfect kind of mode and is ever intensified into pleasure. And I think it's significant that this is here with Matilda, and in my own other readings I've connected to Paradiso 20, where you get the lark, and also lyric image connected to the eagle of justice, that lyricizes, if you like, even maybe lyricizes the question of justice. So really I am concluding here with just a couple of other brief thoughts and maybe a couple of other questions. So really in thinking about the way in which different languages, discourses and modes of utterance animate each other reciprocally and dynamically in a figure like Matilda, and I think Beatrice would be another fascinating example of this. I suppose we can ask what kind of plurilingual or plurivocal or pluridiscursive operation are we talking about? How can we think of it? And I suppose trying to make up a little bit for the absence of Francesco was thinking maybe in musical terms of arrangement. And those of you will know that arrangement in musical terms is precisely an adaptation of a composition for voices or instruments for which it wasn't originally written, but comes into that framework. And that correlates to the way in which Matilda's voice absorbs these really diverse other traditions and makes this metamorphic text that Elena Lombardi's spoken of. That would include erotic lyrics, sacred poetry, pastoral, speech, song, all of these things together, a unique blend of texts and identities. But in floral terms, of course, I like the idea that arrangement also has this idea of aesthetic beauty, the bella, the bella verità perhaps, but also the variegated aesthetic and the pleasure that brings in the variety that it possesses. So this would be captured in a way when we read about Matilda's trattando più color con le sue mani, and Gary, I love this quotation now from the Duncan poem, the self-creative in concert. Maybe that's also Matilda, this idea of creating pleasure. Secondly, and this is a much bigger question, and I've thought about it, and I hope you'll have thoughts about it, it's what happens if we think about the kind of language and the mode of desire that Matilda embodies, and what that does to the paradigm of language and desire we read with Adam in Eden, from the little Gary to 26. What does that do to complicate the picture? I think that's an interesting question and quite clearly a complex one. And last of all, although I could have actually started here, I'm really fascinated by that moment where, basically 4 or 5 cantos we've read about Matilda as donna or bella donna, and then finally we get to the last canto of the poem, and suddenly we have her name, like Matilda. And not only do we have her name, but we have her named by Beatrice. And this is the last quotation. So, per cotal prego, detto mi fu, this is Beatrice speaking, prega Matilda che ti dica. So ask Matilda, Beatrice says, using that proper name which still today fascinates readers with its plethora of possible reference, which refuse to be just one, and as such designate Beatrice's fellow speaker with an individuality that is as irreducible as it is enigmatic, and crucially I think keeps all these dimensions in play. And if we think of the relationality and the dialogism on which Beatrice's utterance is predicated, which joins her priego to Dante's pregare and to Matilda's dire, then that lady's identity is also, I think, irreducibly plurilingual and poetic.
the sensorial actualization of multiple languages and linguistic registers in common. Thanks for these three really wonderful contributions that come on the heels of Manuela's absolutely extraordinary performance this morning. I'm sure there are lots of questions. I've been told by Lisa we can take until 2, is that? Or 10 to 2? So we can take until 10 to 2. I see that Al has his hand raised already, so I will pass the microphone over to Al.
First of all, I'd like to say that all of the talks were quite wonderful. I learned an immense amount. And a little perversely, though, I would like to speak on behalf of unity, and not unity as an alternative to pluralism or plurality. More generally, we seem to be using plurilingualism in a way where we talk about multiplicity of a wide variety of kinds. But as implicit in every mention of plurality, that is unity, in a form of dialectic, both for Dante's society, where the sort of basic structure of creation and of thought is the relationship between the one and the many, unity and multiplicity, and so on and so forth. And I will go back to some things that I've said before, so they will probably sound familiar, but I think, for instance, in the table of Eloquencia, the sort of opening up onto the multiplicity and irregularity of the vernaculars, which ends up somehow with Dante proposing a vulgare illustre, which comprehends all of the other kinds of languages within itself. With the little problem within it, I mean, first of all, a contradiction between his larger scheme of the way that Babel has created a dispersion of languages throughout the world, but in particular, the fact that this language, when he tries to identify where it is, it belongs in a place that doesn't exist, and to a very small group of people, and in the end probably is only him, and therefore is, in a sense, an illustration of a kind of Babelic language. So, but I think out of that one does have to sort of keep coming back to the way in which he is, we seem to see in Dante's text, a striving toward comprehending as much multiplicity as possible within a structure, a unifying structure. In the Convivio, my favorite passage, at the end of Book 1, where Dante says of his friend the vernacular, if the vernacular could speak for itself, it would say, I would like to be stable, unified, coherent, clear, be able to speak in advanced concepts. And he says, well, so what it can't do for itself, I will do for it by the use of rhythm and rhyme, which will create, by turning it into poetry, I give it structure, and this for me, of course, also reappears when he talks about the autore from my whale. I ask this not because, not because I want to divert attention from the importance of the plurilingualism and the sense of multiplicity, but toward, I think, this incessant striving of grappling with the question of unity that goes alongside or is intrinsic in the multiplications that you've been talking about.
First of all, I would like to thank Ambrogio, Francesca, and Gary for really a wonderful presentations that I found most inspiring. And thank you all for the question. If I may, I begin and I see what you have to say, because it it really addresses one of the points that I am making, which is, like, for me that unity is a whole, which is not one. So like, it's a sense of not denying, if you want, the verticality, that unity is associated with, this sense of accomplishment and teleology that would be eventually attained, which is certainly a drive, of the poem. But I don't know, for me, I think it's interesting that you were speaking precisely of the vulgari and the convivio. So like this search for unity is, it seems to me, that is what you were referring to, intentional in these two works. Then it seems to me that at least linguistically, that search for unity is abandoned in the Divine Comedy, or at least like theorized as such in my religion. But then for me the question is, even though he theorizes unity, does poetic language allow for that to happen? It's a sense that the idea that something is what an author may theorize, and then something else is also like what we find in the text. And for me, that was the question that in a way was driving my reading of the poem, where I would see, and something that really came through working in eschatology. And first, I thought that there was this sort of really contradiction into it. That's what I was trying to say. With this agnostic. And then the question is how that is conveyed linguistically. So you see, it's not to deny that there is a kind of search for unity, or even a unity, but it's a unity that for me allows for the articulation of something that makes it precisely a unity which is not one. Here it was a sort of play with the Ligarain there, and a sense which is not one. So, so like my sort of emphasis lies in it is precisely right. It seems that somewhat different, precisely because I was more interested in these moments that I don't know, would not necessarily. You talk of like dialectics, and for me that word is very feedback. Maybe I have like a superficial reading of Hegel. But for me, dialectics stand with that suppression, which then I recognize in the figure interpretation, in conversion, in all of that sense of unity. And for me, plurilingualism is that which allows precisely for that not to happen. You see, like I don't see it as something problematic. I see it as something great that poetic language allows for. So that's why I was asking if it depends on like how you read text, how we understand poetic language, and clearly there are different possibilities. Yeah, so like, yeah, please. Yeah, so maybe the last thing that was the first that I thought was for me was really very interesting here when you were speaking about Duncan's permission that he gives himself to self-contradict himself. And for me, my reading of Dante is coming from Pasolini's idea of like self-contradiction, lo scandalo of contraddirsi, and that possibility that maybe, I don't know, like it's what language allows Dante to achieve, sometimes in spite of his own intentions. And why? Because precise language also always carries that polymorphous character that you have shown to have inbuilt, seems to be sort of like semiotic origin in the experience of, the connection with the mother in this, Cora kind of way.
Just very briefly, because in this context it might be helpful. I mean, I think it's true on one level. We're talking about something, the one versus the many, something very old in the history of ideas, and that we could be accused of overemphasizing the many. But that's very real in Dante, and I would just raise the image, his own image of Grammatica, right, called in science with systemization and unity, or attempting to find unity as the moon, as this sort of mysterious presence that is one but is not one, that's sort of infinite in its permutations and that keeps changing. I mean, there's no better image for me of a sort of whole that's not one, if that helps.
Other questions?
I was also thinking, just to
There's
give
a-
another analogy, I was thinking about that, the moment when, at the top of, at the end of paradise, when the circumference becomes a point, about which Ariel has written, as being related to that sort of possible moment where the extension of the whole universe, that is the outer part of the universe, becomes the single unifier center. It's a comment, not a question.
Others? Brian?
My name is Brian Scott, and I'm here as a guest. And I want to say, first of all, that I was just so impressed by Manuel's paper and all the other commentaries which have again written us about the university, which makes me very much enjoy in gratitude. I want to ask a question which involves Professor Pistoja, Manuel, and maybe the other two speakers as well. And it goes back to this business of the Eucharist. The Eucharist.
Yes.
Some of you may know I'm a modest Augustinian scholar, and so the Eucharist comes up in my work from time to time. And my question is this: if we begin with a very pertinent commentary of Ugolino's children and the inversion, or the challenge that scene represents for Eucharistic theology, and we go back to the wonderful quotation from Arab, which was at the center of the second half of Manuel's paper, and then touch on perhaps what Matilda and the other speakers have. My question is this: if we go back to antiquity, the Eucharist is a very straightforward business in the Mass and elsewhere. That we don't have a lot of commentaries on the Eucharist. We just accept it and not. By the 13th century, a new Eucharistic theology has developed. St. Francis, other people have contributed to this. And so my question is this: to come back to Auerbach's idea of a man-centered and irresistible body in this whole process, is Dante not saying something that's both poetic and theological, in the sense that the complexity that you all see in poetry is also there for theology? He is challenging, just as Auerbach said about the body, he's challenging also the systematic theology, the ladders of heaven of Augustine, the whole paraphernalia, which has been inherited in this complex way by the 13th century, with unity as its ultimate goal, with the single is he not challenging? That's my question. I don't know whether it's a legitimate question for you all.
Thank you so much. This is a very inspiring observation and a way of problematizing things for me. So I don't really have an answer, but I'm welcoming and I want to think about the way in which you're asking us to think or rethink of Dante's relationship to theology, Eucharistic theology. Now, I would like to do two things here. The first one is to echo the observations that you just made by redirecting the question towards Manuele and saying, we have a problem in that example that you brought. Do you think we have a problem in the fact that Auerbach is rereading one of the darkest episodes of hell? I mean, if things crumble there, shouldn't we remember that? Shouldn't we remember where we are? I mean, the fact that the Figaro is destroyed from within in hell, isn't that a proof of the fact that hell is against the Figaro? So there is in a way to say that Ugolino too is acting against a certain theology, a certain reality. Dante's relationship to the Eucharistic theology of the time, it's something that I just started to work on. But yes, these are the years where, for example, the introduction of the elevati, the particle being shown to the congregation is introduced. We have the text of Thomas Aquinas, or at least attributed to Thomas Aquinas, circulating these hymns, the Lingua, and so things are changing dramatically these years. And to try to understand where Dante is going or against who is going is difficult because the mapping is in evolution. But certainly what he's doing here by integrating these Eucharistic images and the rules, because we're talking about the Decreto Graziano too, so the way in which the officiant prepares himself and the bread, that is hinting at these texts too. So it's a bit puzzling, but I want to think about it, especially in light of what you suggested. Yeah.
Thank you. It is an important question to which I cannot answer, also because I am not an expert on Eucharist theology. But what I can try to say is that, and again, so I'm really speaking like big ideas, and but what I see happening in the Divine Comedy is that I sort of see an attempt to integrate, to sort of more of a theological epic, Christian epics, and a sort of individual lyric world. After all, here even the poet, a poet who speaks in first person and describes a sort of universal canon. And for me, that's the clash that sort of creates multiple tensions. And then, some people see them as, part of this plurality that is harmonized, while what I was trying to argue, also connecting with language that carries that sort of singularity or irreducibility, is that how that does not ever really mingle and creates moments that are very interesting. The way in which I'm sure also theologians, had to struggle with. It's just that, and for me what is interesting is that you find a sort of they are staged in the poem themselves. It's even when you are not thinking necessarily only theologically, but also in the logics of the poem, then you find some sort of unsolved contradiction. So I'm sorry that I cannot answer your question.
I think Ariella has
I think you're right, but remember not just in pretend the Inferno Arabag was saying that it's true, but later they can't give up their messiahs either. In the Purgatorio, the several instances it also applies. But this is a very interesting question that Mel has raised, and so my question would be, isn't poetry his theology?
Isn't
poetry his theology? We have, you see, what's interesting about this period is that theology breaks up. It's always the crying of something that's more interesting than building it up. But this is the case. If you look over to Meister Eckhart in Germany, take Meister Eckhart, he's considered heretic of the church. He fortunately died before he could be put on trial. He's saying in his sermons, something very crucial to us. It matters how you live and how you conceive your life in literary terms, rather than believing in the metaphysics of the church. What really matters is what you do with it every day. He's preaching this to his congregations, his Dominican congregations in Germany. And there are others who, heretics and others who take up different, how should I say, strands, spiritual Franciscans, in one example. So I think that Dante is even right at the center of this, which is the most potent, which is that it's literature. And it's literature.
Thank you.
And I'm conscious of time, and so I want to give Ariella who's been waiting to ask your question.
Thank you. This is very, very quick. First, thank you to all the panelists and the keynote. Fabulous, fantastic. I have questions for all of you. I will not ask them. We have lunch. But I did want to just struck by how you pointed out Purgatory 29, tu materna cantando come donna innamorata, and I just wanted to hear you elaborate more on what that means, come. Yeah, and that was really actually, I mean, this is thanks to having this opportunity to go back to something that I worked on before to see something different in it. And so I don't really have an answer, I mean that it seems to me that that's also again coming back to this kind of flexibility and this sort of richness of these single words that also, I mean probably what we'll do is also think about in other contexts how this word is being used by Dante, but here it was partly because of also, as Lydia hinted at, we've been thinking also about lyric as a mode, and sort of in a way also to kind of rethink outside maybe of the stricter boundaries of genre, and the ways in which precisely that could still continue to, if you like, exist within an epic text, that you could still have, and mode there really also pointing particularly to textuality in the way in which textuality is, if you like, also alive for something that would be actually kind of like, in ways we thought of as having a performative value, but also therefore precisely not fixed in some way. So then that come, it's like, it's obviously, it's kind of, it can also be like the how and the way and the why, but for me it was, yeah, trying to understand, also I suppose coming back to this question of what it means for materna to be innamorata. I mean, what exactly she's doing there, what, you know, what that is, and how language might be precisely reflecting or modulating that, but it's something I'd like to think more about, and I don't know if others might have thoughts on. I mean, I know there's a lot about lyric recently, but yeah, it's just very striking, and it's there, and you should think of that kind of well.
Well, I think that brings us to the end of our time available. I would want to ask you to join me in thanking our keynote. Presenters and the officers of the Document Society, follow the crowd, follow these.
And all the others are going to be.
In that book, I sensed and discussed in Dante what French psychoanalyst Pistoja had called a maternal semiotic. This is speech emergent, not yet language, still nearly one with its bodily infrastructure. A primal corporeal grammar where the binary between body and reason collapses somewhat. The semiotique for Kristeva is musical, rhythmic, pulsive, libidinal, one with bodily functions. For Kristeva, and I argue for Dante, this primal semiotic realm is strongly identified with the scene of maternal nursing. And it is the source of inspired verse making, poesis, for poetic language, and I would suggest in this context, Dante's poeticized plurilingualism. This is the nursing infant on the verge of speech, semiotic perceptions of light and sound working their fraught path towards symbolic definition, separation from the body, and then, alas, a kind of exile. This is the period of early mental life that Freud had in his sights when he decided, scandalously, that we human beings are all polymorphously perverse. Just to throw one more poly into the mix. Besides Contini's polyglottia and what should have been Francesco Ciabattoni's polyphonia, and Dante, or at least the pseudo-Dante's own polysemus, hoc est plurium sensum. That we've been hearing about from the Camozzi. Polymorphously perverse for Freud forms desire takes many different forms. I might say ad placito for this thing too. So it has been enormously gratifying to me that my musings on Dante and the nursing body have been taken up and I think kept alive, to be sure, by Manuel Gagliardi, Francesca Southerdern, and Eleanor Lombardi, whose writings have shifted somewhat plurilingualism into a more subjective or psychological register. at looking at Dante's linguistic complexity, Emanuele too has been tempted to discern something like a theory of subjectivity, inspired perhaps more than by Contini's polyglottia by Auerbach's ideas, as we've heard about Dante's powers as a portraitist of human realism and human individuality, and the complex relationship between figura and stile mission that he talked about. A daring experimentalism occasioned by dispossession, by exile. There is perhaps nothing more paradigmatic of the human predicament. Language is desire, and in Dante, the desiring body, the speaking being, endures into the very upper reaches of paradise, as Emanuele has shown in his investigations of the challenging concept in medieval theology of the resurrected body. The insistence in Dante on a sort of corporeal wholeness, even in salvation, although it's a wholeness which is not one. This probing psychoanalytic focus on the scene of first speech as somehow revelatory of human subjectivity may strike us as exceptionally modern, but of course it's rooted for Dante in any number of ancient and medieval discourses, not least of which Augustine's Meditations on Time and Speech and Language Learning, productively investigated by Eleanor Lombardi, who has also defined Dante as a masochistic author and a linguistic minority, particularly in the open context of the comedy. The scene of first speech is one that Dante returns to and rehearses in many places, as I've said, though perhaps nowhere more directly and elaborately than when our melancholic subject re-encounters Beatrice, who of course was up in maternal and nursing, in Eden, where Dante himself, the pilgrim at least, is returned to the state of babbling infancy. Francesca Southerdern has written eloquently of this scene in her recent reading of Particularity 31 of Sophocles. Plurilinguists are simply fascinated by the mystery of the speaking being. Now turn your hand out. The well-regarded post-war American poet Robert Duncan was also drawn to the pluralistic nature of Dante's linguistic universe, and indeed the word polysemous, which he cites from the Epistle of Conrad in his remarks on the sweetness and greatness of Dante's Divine Comedy. That's the title of the talk in the paper he has from 1965, the anniversary year 1965, which you may know from Peter Hopkins and Rachel Jacobs, The Poet's Dante, that's been republished there. So Duncan takes note here of Dante's emphasis on the literal, for him the material, the physical, as primary. Influenced by his theosophical parents, drawn by what some have called the occult, Duncan had studied medieval literature at Berkeley before emerging as a leading figure in the post-war period of the so-called San Francisco Renaissance. I bring him up here because I'd like to close my remarks today by reading one of his poems, just one, not both of these, although I've given you two here. This is Duncan's riff on some crucial lines in the opening of the De Eloquentia. Now, if you know his essay on sweetness and greatness, you know that for Duncan, Dante, which is to say poetry, is all about embodying the body of the text, the human body, the body of the created universe. For me, Duncan represents something of a delicious conflation between Dante and Walt Whitman. Walt Whitman, who famously said, I contradict myself very well. In this, Duncan's poetics are trained on the particulars of utterance, of speech as sound and light abroad in the universe, in its many forms, moon glow, sea and tides, milk and honey, the sap of trees, the buzzing of bees. Duncan liked Charles Olson's wild ideas about something called projective verse, according to which the poet is supposed to somehow just direct the pulse of his breath directly onto the page in poetic form. Not only in theology, but in poetry too, Duncan writes, something goes awry if in our adoration of the Logos, we lose sense or we cut loose from the living body and passion of man in the actual universe. End of quote. The eternal play of sound and light in the poetic universe are expressed through Dante's pre-Christian muses, the Virgin, Lucia and Beatrice. I would dare to leave the thought, Duncan concludes this essay, I would dare to leave the thought that Mary, mother of the Logos and of the living body of the man in one, may be sound, mother of the word in its letters, and light, mother of the appearance of all bodies. It's clear in any case that Duncan was obsessed with Dante, where he found the supreme expression of his convictions about poetry. Dantean allusion and explicit citations abound in his poems and in his prose pieces. See in particular from his 1964 collection, Roots and Branches, there's 3 Dante sonnets. What's fun for the Dante scholar is that Duncan was himself something of a Dante scholar, who paid close attention to minute details in the text, and not just the comedy, but all of the other works. In Duncan, we find whole poems generated from one word, from one of the minor epistles. Nowhere is this more apparent than in the somewhat obscure, admittedly, late chapbook, which is what you have on this handout, that was called Dante, a Curriculum of the Soul, published in 1974. Now, I don't pretend that this is great poetry. You can see that the production values, it's not easy to get your hand on a copy. Nor is it even among Duncan's most accomplished poems, certainly. But it will come as no surprise that when Duncan starts with the opening paragraphs of the table card, the primal scene of speech, the matrix of plurilingualism. And so in that sense, it is, I think, kind of right on point for us. If you'll allow me, I'm just going to read this very first poem in the collection. We will endeavor, the word aiding us from heaven, to be of service to the vernacular speech. From heaven, these drops of the sweetest honeydew, si dolcemente. From the language we first heard, endearments, whisperings, infant song, and reverie. A world we wanted to go out into, to come to ourselves into. Organizations in the sound of them, verging upon being, upon heaven, hermetic talk, into which my range of understandings was to grow, for love of it, portents, and adults expounding controversial doctrines, personal science fictions, and rules of order. But our own is that which we acquire without any rule, for love of it, imitating our nurses. From the beginning, color and light, my nurse, sounding waves and air, my nurse, animal presences, my nurse, night, my nurse. Out of hunger, instinctual craving, thirst for knowing toward oracular tits. This, being primary, natural, and common, being milk, is animal. Lungs sucking in the air, having heart in it, rhythmic and moving in measure, self-creative in concert, and therein noble. Now, if you look on the back here tonight, you'll see that in the following poem, which is of course in tercets, in sort of grammar and form takeover, and we move from the unmediated wonder to mediated form, and it kind of falls from grace, right? The grammar of constructions and uses, professional, not noble. I particularly like what at the end of that poem, when Duncan directly takes on the grammar masters in the poem's last few tercets. Right, here I'm reading. When the art is one of reading, writing, there must be a grammarye kept in which the old oracular voice returns to take over the poet's intention. We cannot fathom his heart in his mouth, tongue's root in truth's tongue. Insufferable are those masters of grammar who have denied their illiterate nurses out of dry dugs of their own, plunked lightning. So for Duncan, the inspired poet returns to or is taken over by the oracular scene of nursing, moves beyond or through the singular fixed regularity of grammati to a much more various and vital truth, which is channeled from a mysterious force in through the body, the heart, the vocal apparatus, mouth, and tongue. To designate this inspired openness to the polymorphous, if you will, Duncan recovers the exotic, grammarye, kind of old French variant of grammaire that was used, it seems, to speak of the occult. Sorcery was even a synonym for magic. landscape that's unlikely to raise the modern English glamour, evidently. There's something magical about the beginnings of language in the body, the relatively immediate first scene of infant perception, suckling color, light, sound, milk, and dark, verging in time on discrete speech, exuberant, and chloroform. For Duncan, and for Duncan's Dante at least, there lies the home of the true poet, adjacent to paradise.
Well, thank you, Jared, for that lovely paper on the embodied and rhythmic qualities of language and plurilingualism. Francesca Southerdern will be known to everybody in this room for her work on Dante of desire and language. She is associate professor at Oxford, where she's also a fellow at Somerville College. And I think you'll be speaking from that here. And I think there's a handout for Francesca as well that's making its way around. So make sure you get one of those. Francesca, over to you.
Yes, so I'd like to say thank Elisa, Lily, and our last week's invitation and to all the organisers of PSCAD for this invitation to speak. And it really is a pleasure to be here and a privilege to be in conversation with my fellow scholars and speakers today. And like everyone, I feel like I'm only going to be able to make a few observations on issues that really, as Lily said, are so complex. So I hope you'll bear with me. And I think I will be raising more questions than I'll be giving answers, but I hope that'll be a way into the discussion component of this roundtable. And I also hope to reconnect with some things that Lily was talking about in relation to lyric mode, which is something I've been thinking a lot about recently. And also I hope to connect with some elements both from Ambrogio and Gary's comments, so the idea of pluridiscursivity on the one hand and of pleasure on the other hand, and relation to sound, that you were just bringing up. And I hope that will become clear. With the handouts, I won't be reading, you'll be glad to know all of the quotations, but I thought it was interesting to have the texts in front of you. So I'll get started. The first thing I really wanted to say was that I've come to the topic of plurilingualism really by way of a detour. And I say that because it's something that I've been thinking about actually predominantly in relation to Petrarch, and so Martini's work on, if you like, Petrarch's unilinguismo, which, we always think of as undeniable when compared to Dante's plurilinguismo, his much more inclusive linguistic project. On the other hand, I was kind of fascinated, as some scholars have been, with what then we understand by Petrarch's value, or stile, which of course he puts in the first sonnet of his collection, and therefore thereby unfolds interesting questions for us. I really thought about plurilingualism then in relation to varietas and variatio, so to variation and variety, and to these concepts different but related connotations in Petrarch and Dante. Indeed, what I think links the two authors, notwithstanding the very different poetic paths that they take, is really their perception of the instability of the vernacular, and this instability leads at some point to them really wanting to tame or to discipline the vernacular in some way, to master it. And yet, they both acknowledge, I think, in very real ways, the vernacular's significance as a space of creative freedom and of poetic pleasure, precisely because it seems to be a less fixed, in the way that Lily showed, a more elastic and thus a more malleable language in relation to subjective desire. So if you like, it's Adam's così or così, that movement between and among, from one thing to another, secondo che va bella. And unfortunately, I won't have time really to go into this interesting comparison between Petrarch and Dante. I'll just touch on the question of style, of stile. I think there's a lot more to say about it. But I would like to remain with the question of intertextuality. And what I thought I'd do is take an episode from Dante's poem that I've really read intertextually and sort of do a thought experiment about what we do if we think of it more plurilingually. And of course, these things are connected, as scholars who've worked on this episode have already shown, but I wanted to just raise a few interesting points, I hope. So the episode I'm talking about is the encounter with Materna in Earth and Paradise, a space that, as we've already heard from Lily, is inherently plurilingual and plurivocal, encompassing both the vernacular and Latin, the language of erotic lyric and romance poetry, the Latin of scripture as well as the classical texts, the voices of Dante, Virgil and Beatrice, and Matilda herself, of birds and angels. and as I'll particularly want to think about today, also interestingly has a fluid relationship between speech and song. And in my reading of Matilda, I've been especially interested in her status as, amongst other things, a lyric and erotic figure, in her close association with Dante's own lyric past, with the vernacular tradition of love poetry, especially Cavalcanti and the poets of the Novo, and also I've been interested in the composite nature of her identity and her voice, which really I think embody variety and make of her a figure of pleasurable abundance, and as I'll hope to show, actually of excess and of surplus. An identity then that's in keeping with the Edenic landscape that Dante presents to us, but crucially I think isn't reducible to it. And in this sense, my approach is a dialogue with that differs from some existing scholarship that has really recognised the plurality of discourses that are there embedded in Matilda, but sometimes also still sought to hierarchize them, or in a way say that the lyric is corrected by the sort of caritas element. I mean, I absolutely believe those things coexist, but I suppose I'll be connected with Lela's idea of Dante never really pushing the lyric mode, so things stay there, and are intention in a productive way. So I wanted to kind of think about, just very briefly, like how I'm thinking about variety, and actually this has been something that I've thought about in relation to Mary Carruthers' work on varietas in the experience of beauty in the Middle Ages, where she says that, and I quote her, variety can never be only one thing, and there's a particular aesthetic pleasure that's associated with it. Creating unity and harmony out of diversity is, of course, a crucial and very important goal in both antiquity and the Middle Ages. Yet I think she encourages us to recognise what she calls, and I quote her here, a polyfocal, another poly word, polyfocal perspective that's embedded in so many, for example, medieval images. So she talks about very rich manuscript illustrations, she talks about also church decorations, and the way in which they create these mixtures, these varied presentations, they present non-hierarchical kinds of mixing, and they unfold as a process of pleasurable and productive bewilderment. So this idea that the eye, looking at these objects, moves from one element to the next. It doesn't know where to fix itself definitively anywhere, and it doesn't do that. Instead, it moves between the different elements. And in the Middle Ages, as Carruthers has noted, this experience of variegation is linked to an aesthetic that precisely goes against the classical separation of styles and puts things quite audaciously together. Dante's Matilda then is for me, and I think for others, a figure of plentiful variety. Remember how she appears suddenly in Eden, emerging from out of a variety of trees and blooms, la gran variazione dei freschi mai, as a thing of wondrous beauty. She's also, very importantly, a composite figure depicted in motion as she goes walking and singing and gathering flowers. And this is quotation 1, e la matarde una donna soletta che si gira cantando e scegliendo fior da fiore. Dante's encounter with her unfolds through his perception of her dolce suono, that's the sound element of sweetness, which is linked to her voice and comes crucially with suoi intendimenti, with meaning, which I'd like to think of as both rational but also as affective in some way. Her composite nature is also especially pronounced in the opening terzina of Canto 29, where intertextuality and plurilingualism are, I think, hard to distinguish, and where the particularity of Matilda's voice is again remarked upon. This is quotation 3. Cantando come donna innamorata, continuò col fin di sue parole, beata quorum tecta supplicata. As is well known, line 1 is a near citation of a line from Cavalcanti's Ballata in un boschetto tra la pastorella, a poem in dialogue with the profoundly sensual and erotic tradition of the pastorelle. In Cavalcanti's text, the protagonist relates how the shepherdess that he happens upon in a wood, quote, cantava come fosse innamorata, era adornata di tutto piacere, also in your handout. The third line of Dante's terzino, on the other hand, derives from the incipit of Psalm 31, and the rhyme innamorata and peccata thereby brings into relation precisely the vernacular and Latin, a secular love song, and the sacred text of the psalm. In this close proximity of the erotic and the sacred, we're reminded, of course, of the juxtaposition in Purgatorio 2 of the amoroso canto sung by Casella and Psalm 103 in Esito Israele Egitto, intoned by the penitent souls on their arrival at the shore of purgatory. And then, of course, these texts have somewhat different effects, and you'll remember that with the Morche nella mente rendition, what's remembered is the dolcezza, kind of Canto 2, as a result of Cato's rebuke of the stasis that is induced by Gazella's singing, these texts, the erotic and the sacred, are normally read as in tension, and there's this palinodic reading often made in relation to Roque nella Mente. Here in Purgatorio 29, we find instead what Ronald Martinez terms a harmony or a concentus, a conflation literally, as he says, of breathing together, and I quote him, of the vernacular lyric and the liturgical psalm through a single figure and a voice. But of course the singular figure and the singular voice are also composites, clearly. And they're modulated. I think what's happening is that there's a modulation in language of, yes, caritas, but also I'd like to hint at a natural and thereby erotic kind of desire that would go back to the Edenic model. What I find really interesting though, and this is actually something that's much less commented on, perhaps because actually we don't have a word for it critically or conceptually, is what's happening in the movement between speech and song. So between the moments when discursively Matilda will explicate for the pilgrim the origins of Eden, the nature of the phenomena that he sees around him, and those words that she will sing, both at the beginning of Canto 29 and perhaps elsewhere in her activity, in her existence, as an expression, if you like, of her own desires, not just responding to Dante's desire to know, but expressing her own desire as an individual in this space. And actually, this movement between speech and song is cued very visibly in Dante's text in this terzino we're looking at, when he uses that verb continuo. Because again, if he goes to TLIO, we see that in the Old Italian really means to conjoin, but particularly it means unire parole ad altre parole, so uniting one word with another. And as critics note, this gathering of one word with another reflects Matilda's own activity in the garden, as she goes singing and picking flower from flower. What she's also doing is unearthing Eden's identity as a sort of florilegium, right, an anthology of texts that we read with and through her, from the classicals, the lyrical, the scholastic, and the sacred. And of course, Peter Hawkins has written very beautiful pages on this in his work on Matilda. Elena Lombardi has also written about this recently, and she's sort of shown how through this patchwork of texts coming together, what we have, and I quote her, is a metamorphic new text that is created for us, which Matilda incarnates in her multifaceted nature. And thinking back to Gary's work and what Lily's been saying, for me it's also what poetic language is here in this poem and in this episode. So thinking more about this conjoining of words, which extends here, I think, to languages, to texts and textualities, to modes of utterance, to discourses, there are two more interesting details I'd like to pick up on. First, and this has been noted, the citation of the Psalm in 29 is actually a compendium. It's a condensation of the Latin source, which is made to fit the metrical line of the endecasillabo. It does what one commentator has called create a ritmo impensato, an unexpected rhythm that one wouldn't expect to find, a sort of arrangement that only exists by dint of the fact that it's being put into this metrical scheme. A line that then didn't exist before, and it's sort of a mirror image of that line that Lila did quote. When Beatrice writes, we have that citation from the Aeneid with the interpolated o, manibus o date lilia plenis, where the Latin line is there actually expanded through the interpolation of this additional word. It's a compression or expansion, but certainly movement in language. And in the case of Matilda's Salmo de Castrensis, Beati cum tecta sum peccata, a line is sung, in keeping with its liturgical use, also in other parts of the Purgatorio itself, and anticipating the way in which Matilda will then submerge the pilgrim in the waters of Lethe. As such, it connects to all these other examples of psalms that are sung in the Purgatory, although interestingly, the first time that Matilda, if you like, cites a psalm, which is that word delicasti that comes in 28, it's not clear that that line is sung, although it could be. It's probably said by Matilda within her discourse about Eden, in which case I think what we're seeing here is a kind of an understanding that there isn't just one performative mode either, and that actually somehow she's adapting, if you like, language and text to particular contexts. And actually one of the Cormigliano, when he's talked about the difference, if you like, between the second and the first citation, he sees the second mentioning of the psalm is actually much more kind of fluidly integrated and a sort of poetic, maybe rhythmic and musical mode. It's not cued by the fact that it is a sum, it's just sung there in a fluid way. And second, I think it's worth thinking a bit more about what Dante means when he says that she is cantando come donna innamorata. Because that come, yes, I mean, it's this idea of a simile, but it seems to also allow for the fact that we could be thinking about a mode. Like come, like as a woman in love, and not just like a woman in love. And what does it mean to say that she's singing as a woman in love sings? And I think it's interesting because we can think back to how Matilda's described, literally radiating the love that she embodies, that illuminates and animates her, warming herself as she does in these rays. So she might be singing particularly ardently and joyfully in recognition of this. She might also, of course, be singing particularly sweetly. We know we've seen her dolce suono as the sound that cues her presence. Perhaps then also with particular sensual, though of course she's only older, but we kind of maybe forget that with this materiality that's being cued. And as we've said, this dolce suono brings knowledge, but it also clearly brings delight, and something that is sensual, to do with sensual pleasure. She might also sing, of course, with particular womanly grace. If we think about that adverb, donescamente, that will be used of her, and that's in quotation 6, a word that Dante coins to denote a sort of particular form of refinement and elegance that Matilda has, which is again very much in dialogue with the lyric tradition of the Domina, who of course is the figure incarnating nobility, but is also crucially very powerful and often puts her lover into submission, so there's interesting questions around gender and relationality. And in light of this, we might ask, does Dante's cantando come donna innamorata then mean to convey a form of delight that might actually be specific to female pleasure and desire, either here in Eden or elsewhere? And while I think this question is difficult to answer, I like to think that Dante's poem allows us to at least pose it. And I think it does that by having this kind of very intimately lyric line blend and resonate with a sacred one, but without allowing us to reduce either to the other, like they coexist in a really productive play. And this poetic mixture that Dante creates with its polyphonical perspective doesn't stop there. And in the very next canzino, you'll remember this is quotation 7, he compares the materna in movement to nymphs who play hide and seek, if you like, with the sun, and they wander through the shaded forest and follow their desire. I won't read that quotation. But what I find interesting here is that, of course, we can gloss this comparison with a line from Virgil's Georgics that talks about the nymphs in this kind of shaded forest. At the same time, Dante repeats the adjective sole, which links back to the soletta. It's again a lyric kind of atmosphere. It's the one of the pastorella, the pastorelle. Even more interesting, this is a point Thomas Stillinger made, actually thinking through Boccaccio's Pleasure Gardens back to Dante, is that we move from donna to nymphe as a proliferation from a singular figure to a plural comparison. And I find that very interesting, this kind of idea that there might be an expression of amplitude in that proliferation of the singular subject into a plural one in the simile. And I like to think that like these mobile nymphs, Matilda is free to follow a course at her pleasure, così or così. And the Pilgrim Dance, if you remember, he does his best to mimic her gait, but she's still like, if you like a woman dancing, like Donna Cavalli, and so he has to sort of keep up with her, and she's moving in this very free way while still following the path upstream. And so I'd like to suggest that these forms of desire and pleasure, to use Lilith's term, form of desire, which proliferate and vary even as Matilda moves in synchrony with her surroundings, that these might also be a distinctive trait of her speech. And so this phenomenon in language we might actually illuminate, I think, through a phenomenon that Leo Spitzer has thought about in terms of what in German is called Sprachstilen, a language of particularity that is defined by the distinctive use that individuals make of the linguistic resources that are available to them. And Spitzer's work on style and étude de style really aims at bringing literary history and linguistics into dialogue. And as Jean Stabowinsky has noted, Spitzer regards words as living forms. They undergo distinct transformations when they become part of a literary language. And the ways in which literary and ideological forms of change happen really occur when a writer's language actually deviates from a norm that's regarded as restrictive or proscriptive, and that this occurs when verbal metaphor into synchrony or into dialogue at least. And I think she seems to capture something of Stietz's understanding of style, especially in the corollary, the corollario that she gives, and I'm moving towards the conclusion here, this is quotation 8, when she says, referring to the wits of old nature, the classical poets, se avegna che assai possa esser sazia la sete tua, perché io più non ti scopra, darotti un corollario con per grazia, ne credo che il mio dirti sia men caro, se oltre connessione te così spazia, I won't read the rest. So this corollario is perhaps, for me anyway, an expression of Matilda's own Abella. The idea that in the previous canto she said to Dante that she will answer his questions tanto che basti, as much as is enough, and here she transgresses that earlier promise. And I think if we think of promises as being broken, I don't think we think of going beyond